little nervous. And, okay, that would suck if that was the talk, wouldn't it? That would really suck. So here's the deal. I promise I won't be like that and be a super boring speaker if you guys promise me you're not going to be a boring audience. Is that cool? Cool? Come on, come on. All right. So here's the deal. It's actually, I couldn't think of a better way to lead into this with Ray and Elizabeth. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things I've been involved with. Oop. Do I need this or can you guys hear me? Does Ted need me to use this? Ted needs me to use it. Okay. It's a lightsaber. When I say the word impossible today, you guys are going to... Sorry. That's not, it's in the back pocket. Am I good? Good, hello? Testing. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so when I say the word impossible today, you guys are going to say not, okay? So let's start with, what do we have? We had sixth graders. Sixth graders, impossible. Not! Nice. Seventh graders, impossible. Not! Bring in the heat. Eighth graders, impossible. Not! All right, everybody now, impossible. Not! I'm done, I'm off, that's it. Okay, so this is me. I am in the business of design and animation, illustration. I get to work on super, super cool stuff. I got to work on James Bond films. I got to shoot with Common, work with Alicia Keys, Jack White, make really, really cool stuff. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. The coolest project I ever worked on, though, was because of this guy. This guy's name is Tony Tempt Kwan. And Tony was one of the foremost graffiti artists, street artists in the 80s and 90s. And he came home from a run one day, and he said, "Dad, my legs are kind of tingling." That was the onset of Lou Gehrig's disease. Does everyone know what Lou Gehrig's disease is? It's called ALS. It's kind of like the blob. It starts at your feet, and it moves up your body, and as it moves up, everything becomes paralyzed. So now Tony is completely paralyzed. The only thing that he can move right now are his eyes, which is pretty intense. And imagine if you were an artist. Like, who here are artists? Designers? Musicians? Any musicians in the house? Imagine if the doctor told you one day you weren't going to be able to play your instruments or draw again, eventually. It would be pretty dramatic. That's essentially what happened to Tony. So my company decided, okay, we're gonna give money to Tony's foundation. So I went to this restaurant in downtown LA called The Pantry, and I met with Steven and Ron, his brother and father, and said, all right, cool, so we're gonna write you a check. What are you gonna use the money for? And Steven was like, I just wanna talk to my brother again. I just want Tony to be able to communicate. And I was like, well, wait a second, how do you communicate now with him? I mean, I thought that if you're paralyzed, you have those machines that kind of talk like robots. He's like, no, those are so expensive. They're really hard to get. And right now, the way we talk is I run my hand along a piece of paper, and when we get to a letter, Tony blinks, and then I write that letter down. And then when I get to another letter, he blinks again, and he spells, letters spell words, words make sentences, and that's how we have a conversation, and it's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly lengthy, and if I mess up, then Tony gets pissed at me, and we have a fight, and it's just like, it's not good. I was like, that's ridiculous. So what happened is I showed up to write a check, and I wrote a check that day. I left, and I promised Steven and Ron, I'm going to help Tony be able to communicate again, and he's going to be able to draw again. And I'm all fired up, and I walk out the door, and I'm like, what the heck did I just commit myself to? I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about ALS. I'm not a computer programmer, but I just saw something that had to be done, and I knew I needed to do it. So I wrote a check, and I had no freaking idea how I was going to pull it off. But I knew, okay, it had to be done. So a couple months later, I went to a conference, and I spoke at a conference. And at the conference, I met these guys who, with laser pointers, can draw on the sides of buildings. And so they go around the world, incredibly talented guys, they go around the world doing these kind of art installation projects. It's really cool stuff. And so I went home, and I'm sitting with my wife at the dinner table, and I'm telling her about this thing. And she says, well, wait a second. If it's possible for these guys to do graffiti again, and we know it's possible for Tony to communicate, because we had just gotten Tony a device. A couple months later, we had gotten Tony a device where with his eyes he could type, and then the words would speak. And this was like a $30,000, $40,000 machine, super expensive. And we just, myself and the producers that work for me, just battered down the walls of insurance companies and hospitals and governmental agencies, and we finally got him this machine. So we knew it was possible for Tony to talk and communicate again. So we knew that you could do graffiti with lasers, and we knew that you could talk. But she said, why is it impossible for... There we go. Come on, guys. All right, we'll start this again. Ready? Why is it impossible for... There we go. Good. Why is it impossible for Tony... Good, good. It's going to backfire on me, I know. Why is it that word... For Tony to do, why don't we figure out a way to hook the lasers maybe up to some kind of device? And we're like, okay, we're onto something. So I called those guys, and about a year later, after lots of planning and organizing and all kinds of kind of figuring out, we flew 7 of these just amazingly passionate, creative, talented scientists. We call them rocket scientists, anarchists, political activists, programmers, hackers, to our house. My family and I moved into our kind of back garage in the back house. They took over our house, and we spent 2 weeks programming and going down and getting experimental things. My kids got involved. Even the dog got involved. And what we came up with at the end was this thing called the Eyewriter, and this is it here. And what it is, it's a pair of glasses that we got at Venice Boardwalk for like $6, some wire, an LED, some LEDs right here that kind of illuminate the pupil, and then we hacked open a PS3 camera. And these are some pictures of it, right here. And Tony would just put it on, and then with his eyes, he would be able to plot points and draw again. So it was pretty cool. And you know what? After this, I'll take it out. If you guys want to put it on and hold it, it's pretty cool to see. So at the end of the 2 weeks, we went back to the hospital. We had been going back and forth. We went back to the hospital. And this is Tony's hospital room right here. And I love this shot because this was nighttime. Most of the team was flying back the next morning. And this was kind of our grand finale. So and you can see all kind of the action going on there. And so we set up a projector from his room down to a wireless signal from his room down to the parking lot, and then projected a huge image on the side of the building. And Tony drew again for the first time. And I love this shot because this is Tony here. That's his life support system, the tubes and the things that are basically keeping him alive. And then that's the first thing he ever wrote. And the funny thing is, the first thing he ever wrote, I think that's what's keeping him alive. All the other stuff is just kind of like the machinery, but that's what's keeping him alive because he's so passionate, and he's an artist. He's an artist that just wants to draw. So after this was all over, Tony wrote this to us. That was the first time I'd drawn anything for 7 years. I feel like I'd been held underwater, and someone finally reached down and pulled my head up so I could take a breath. Remember the question I asked you guys earlier, who's designers and musicians? Imagine if that would taken away from, imagine if you got grounded from drawing or doing music for 7 years, and finally you're like, okay, you can do it again. It feels so like, oh my God, I'm back alive again. And that's essentially what happened to Tony. So the cool thing was on this was that we started off trying to just help Tony. Just wanted to help Tempt, help him draw again. And it was one artist. But quickly what happened was in the course of programming this and doing this, we realized this can actually not just help one person, this could help millions of people, anybody with ALS, MS, MD, maybe they have some kind of spinal cord injury, anybody who does not have control of their limbs, maybe this can help them communicate again. And it can happen all over the world. In fact, last January, we sent a team to Mumbai, and one of the guys is actually here. He's over here, Mark. And we flew Mark and James to Mumbai, and with nothing, basically, and they constructed an Eyewriter in Mumbai and actually got it to work over the course of the time that they were there, which was pretty intense. And this also was the advent of an organization that my wife and I and Tony started called the Non-Impossible Foundation. Nice, nice. Although, wait, I said non-impossible, so that cancels it out. So, and it's all about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Remember the check that I wrote? No freaking idea? Same thing. I had no idea, but we were able to figure it out. So for me, this whole thing kind of brought up this concept of impossible. Nice. Only got, come on, impossible. All right. And our brains are wired from a very early age. When you guys are babies, when we're all babies, we're constantly told, no, don't do that, or stop, or never touch that. And it's all towards the effort of keeping us healthy and making sure that we're safe, right? Well, what happens is, though, is that when you come up with that idea, and Elizabeth talked about, when you come up with that thing that you want to do, if you ever believe that these things are true, then this is what happens. Nothing. If you believe that you can't do it, absolutely nothing's going to happen. So, how many people here have cell phones? Everybody has cell phones, right? No. Okay, good. Adults, do you guys remember when there wasn't such a thing as cell phones? Yeah. Cell phones were impossible. No. Good. In fact, there was this movie with Wall Street, and he had this big old thing, and I was like, oh, that's cool. That's really, what is that thing? Everything that we're surrounded by right now was impossible at one time. Nice. You guys are getting good at this. How many people drove here today? Cars were impossible? No. Good. This building, some of the things about this, well, just the building in general, but some things about this building were impossible. No. But the people who do these things didn't believe it, or they just kept working. And the key thing to remember is if you have something that you want to do, it's impossible. Nice. It's impossible right now. It can't be done now, but it will be done eventually. And are you going to be the one who's going to do it? So the thing that I want you guys to kind of take away from this today is just take whatever you want to do and don't believe that you can't do it. Believe that you can do it and make it impossible. Impossible. Thanks, guys. Cheers.